What's up, James? How you doing?
Hey, Georgie, how are you? Thank you
good.
for inviting me onto your podcast. So
No,
very
I'm
excited to be
excited.
here.
I'm excited for today's conversation. Honestly, I mean, I wonder how we're going to limit the subject of breath to just 1 hour or so. It's almost the impossible task we're undertaking today.
Well, it is pretty much the foundation of everything, isn't it? Breath.
It truly is. Do you know, I would say it's the foundation of all health, personally.
Yeah, it's the foundation of life.
Oh,
Prana,
yeah.
life force. So it is that which gives everything life. It
Absolutely.
is the very foundation of existence, really.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
and then, obviously in Sanskrit, prana means breath and life force. So
Yeah.
it is the two things are kind of the same, and you
Yeah.
often hear about creation being the inhalation and exhalation of God, and this expansion and contraction. And
Yeah.
so yeah, breath is absolutely fundamental to yoga, to
Yeah.
meditation, to spirituality, and even to like just the nature of reality. So yeah, it's really good to have a more specific conversation about
Yeah.
something like this.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And even in a sort of on a physiological level, if your breathing is dysfunctional, and that's completely out of whack, I sort of often say it's like trying to build a house on top of a puddle. It just doesn't work, because breathing is so foundational and it's so connected to everything. It's almost like the voice of all of the internal systems of your body, because the breath never lies, does it? The breath is the most honest thing, and it's both inward and outward. And I think there's something quite fascinating, both spiritually and scientifically, about that as well. But before we sort of really get into the crux of breath, I mean, I really love to find out a little bit more, especially for people listening, I'm sure would too, about your journey into breath and into yoga and all of your spiritual practices, and sort of how the power of the breath was illuminated to you in your life as such.
That's yeah, how breath became significant. Well, I think it's tied in with my spiritual journey and my journey into yoga.
Yeah.
So for those who aren't familiar with myself, I'm James, and I work at the Yogic Centre for Wellbeing in Harrogate.
Yeah.
So I was brought up in quite a religious family, you could say, and but I started to wake up spiritually in my teenage years through some meditation experiences and so even some visionary experiences when I was in Africa. Quite mind-blowing experiences, which just completely set my life on a different tangent. Although I think that kind of spiritual essence was always there, but it was only really until late teens and then early 20s where I really started to explore spiritual practices. And in fact, the very first spiritual yogic practice I learned was Sudarshan Kriya. So Sudarshan means beautiful sight or clear sight. And it's a technique taught by Sri Ravi Shankar. He's an Indian kind of guru. And it basically was a number of different breathing techniques. And the goal was that you do these different breathing techniques and then it leads you into meditation. So I did that, I think, when I was 21. And that became the foundation of my meditation practice. And then at university, I started to go to Buddhist society, and we're practicing the breathing meditations. The breathing meditation is a very big part of the Buddhist meditations, awareness of breath. And I was reading philosophy and Eastern philosophy and also getting into quantum physics. And I'd already had this kind of spiritual awakening a few years earlier. And then that led me to India at just before I turned 24. So I just took a one-way ticket and ended up spending 5 years out there and studied my master's in Indian philosophy and comparative religion at Varanasi University in the north of India. So I was studying for 3 years. And I was also studying yoga in my holidays, in my free time. And I ended up doing a couple of different yoga teacher trainings and some other courses, and Ayurveda, Indian traditional medicine. So really that 5 years I went very deeply into spirituality, into yoga, into philosophy, doing a lot of breath work. But actually, I kept that Sudarshan Kriya, that original technique that I learned, that albeit added a few other breathing practices to it to make it a little bit more whole, if you like. And I've kept that really going from 21. And now I do it every morning. I wake up 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I'll get up, I'll do 30 minutes of breathing, 30 minutes of meditation, go back to sleep. And normally then I'll do like dream work, because the breath actually charges your dream body. So you need to have a strong dream body. You need to have circulated prana throughout the body. You to have things like lucid dreams and astral projections. So what I found was that when I was getting up and doing my breathing practice early morning, I started to have, I was already doing astral projection, lucid dreaming before, but it started to intensify these experiences. And it's really interesting how breath influences the dream world and the dream work, which is part of my spiritual practice. So yeah, and now I'm just teaching yoga, and obviously teach pranayama.
So casually, after all that, just teaching yoga.
It was the only thing to do.
It's true. It is the only thing to do right now. I'm so happy though that you said that you do actually go back to sleep a little bit after the 4 or 5 a.m.
Oh yeah, there's no way I could stay up.
No, well, because I don't know if you've read, or anyone listening has read Robin Sharma's 5 a.m. Club. I loved it. It's just a book about the power of waking up in those early hours of the morning and having sort of a solid practice, and a morning routine has definitely been something that's anchored me, especially in terms of the breath, connecting with my breath, looking inward before I give anything out to the world for the rest of the day. But yeah, and I definitely tried getting up at sort of 5 a.m. for quite a sustained period of time. I always had to go back to bed. Is there a reason why you do it at that specific time at 4 5 a.m.?
It's just when I wake up naturally.
Wow.
So typically we need about 5 hours sleep for the body to restore and recharge.
Yes.
That's when we kind of, according to the Indian traditions, we go back to source, even if it's just for like a fleeting moment.
Yeah.
But certainly physiologically, it's when the body's assimilating and healing and rejuvenating, repairing. Those 5 hours, 3 sleep cycles are absolutely essential for your existence and your health.
Of course,
yeah,
of course.
Absolutely. If you don't have those, you're gonna really struggle.
Yeah.
And then, generally speaking, we have a couple more sleep cycles, and the sleep cycle is about 90 minutes. And a couple more sleep cycles, and that tends to be where we have these dream experiences.
Yeah.
Before that, the dreams we have, it's more like symbolic, and it's very much relative. So the dream of being chased by something or someone, that's a typical kind of anxiety dream. It's just your psyche interpreting what's going on internally. It's like you're trying to process and interpret, and you can gain information from those types of dreams.
Yeah.
But it's really the dream travel when you go into REM sleep. So yeah, you need those 5 hours, and just from it started really doing the dream work, I just started to wake up at that time, get up, go to the bathroom, go back to bed, then I'll practice my dream work. And then I started to have my dream experiences, and really just from there it became a habit. But I do notice that again in yoga we recognize that the energy swaps from the left side to the right side, from call it Ida and Pingala, the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So because you breathe more clearly through one nostril. So the left side corresponds to the feminine. It's the parasympathetic. It's the rest, digest, recharge, socialize, sleep. And then the right side is the sympathetic nervous system, corresponding, and they swap the sides of the brain. So the left brain, right side, that corresponds to your sympathetic nervous system. Get up, go, act, move, achieve, externally focus. So what I always find 9 times out of 10 when I wake up at around that time, I'm either just about to shift to my right side, or I've just shifted to my right side. So it's like, and I remember reading an article, someone was saying that actually it's more natural to have 2 sleep cycles than to have 1 extended sleep cycle. I find
Right.
that I'll have one extended sleep cycle if I'm really tired, and I'll probably wake up and I'll be like, I can't be bothered to get out of bed. I just
Yeah.
fall back asleep. But I have to be pretty tired to be there.
Yeah.
Place like, and it won't. It's not always 4. It can be 3:30. It can be 5. It can be 6. But yeah, so that's the reason you have
Right.
generally the 5 hours, and then then you can go into the REM sleep. But also in the Indian traditions and the Eastern traditions, that time between sort of 3 and 6 is called Brahma Murta. It's the time of God, and
Ah,
it's the most pure time in the day. It's the most auspicious time, the most spiritual time, the most mystical time. It's to do with the sunrise and
yeah.
the balanced energy and the calm energy, and something to do with the ions and the electrons. I'm not sure about the
Of
science
course, of
behind it,
course.
but it's incredibly conducive for meditation, spiritual practice, dream travel. And so
Mm.
it's really great if you can utilize that time. And if you need to go back to bed, then that's fine, no
Yeah.
problem. That's cool.
That's that's so nice to hear, from someone with such extensive knowledge. That's for me personally the little bit of information I was missing, because when I was trying to get up at 5, I was definitely just soldering on from 5 through my whole day.
Yeah,
So
that's punishing. Yeah, unless you go to
yeah.
bed at 9, it can work, right?
Yeah.
Go to bed at
Yeah.
8:39, depending on how much sleep you need. It
Mm,
can work. But
true.
personally, I teach in the evening. I don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
Maybe that is the ideal. You're
Right.
more in tune with the cycles, but it depends. Like they say, you should rise and with the sunrise. Well, it depends what in the UK. It depends what season you're in, right? Because
Yeah.
if it's winter, you won't be getting out of bed till like
9. Yeah,
9
yeah.
and go to bed at like 4 or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's not
No, no,
always
no.
practical. But
No.
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah, 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 for sure. And but there definitely is something in terms of conducive across many traditions in terms of being with the body, mind, breath first thing in the morning. And I think that sort of global knowledge that, as was unspoken for thousands of years, it was just known that being with the breath was incredibly beneficial at any point, but especially in the morning. I think that really says something just about, global coherence, of course, is a thing, but in terms of our connection to the world, our intuition, our inner knowing that this is just right. And that definitely sort of feeds my belief that breathing is absolutely on par, and I'm talking about breathing practice, with drinking water, eating, sleeping, all of the basic human needs. Sitting and breathing, I think, is of equal importance, especially, and I'm interested if you agree with this, especially in the Western world we live in today, where we are so overstimulated, where that right side, that sympathetic side, in some ways and in some walks of life, is actually dominant, and you can become locked in that state of up, awake, going, achieving, doing, right? So
yeah,
resting and checking in is of absolute importance, I think.
100%. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, we're so externalized, we're so
Mm-hmm.
adrenalized, we're so
Uh-huh.
distracted and caught up in, the very materialistic rat race, achievement, external career,
Yeah.
controlled by the watch, this unnatural time, Roman numeral time, which takes us out of our natural cycles with the moon and things, this crazy calendar that we work to. And so in the West, though we've achieved great things, in terms of science and, what we've managed to achieve on an external level, we've really lost that connection to self and connection to breath and connection to more of that internalized, receptive, feminine energy. Actually, it's more of that internal journey is more of a feminine expression. We live in a very, they think of the West and the East as the two hemispheres of the brain, and we see duality even in the breath, the inhalation and the exhalation. We find duality everywhere, night and day, birth and death. And the West is more like the masculine, external focus, science, and then the East, the generally traditionally has been more internally focused. It's more about philosophy and spirituality and inner connection and all these wonderful things. And ultimately we're looking for balance. It's all about balance, because there is a trinity, when we talk about the mother and the father and the child, that it's ultimately the duality. There is a third stage. It's that trinity. That's that middle point, that 0 point, that where we're balanced between the right and the left, and the East and the West, and the external and the internal. And, in yoga, we do, the whole point of hatha yoga is to balance the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, the Pingala and Ida, the sun and the moon. And then you enter into that third space, if you like, and that's when the main channels, so the Ida and Pingala, two of the main nadis, again, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, that kind of snake up the spine. And then the spine, the main channel is Sushumna nadi, which is, again, correlates to the kind of central nervous system. But and the goal of hatha yoga is to, and kundalini and things, these kind of practices, to activate and open that channel. But that can only open when the left and the right side, these other two energies, are balanced. So it's really key. It's about getting the balance of both things. So that time in the day, for like especially first thing in the morning, last thing at night, and I also find personally around 4 p.m. Especially if I'm teaching in the evening, just having those times where you check in with yourself, breathe, set your intentions, or just see what's going on mentally, psychologically, see how your breathing is so important. But I think we have forgotten how to breathe. We're never taught how to breathe. We're not taught in school. There's, I think, trauma and lack of education prevent us from breathing properly.
Absolutely.
And so most of us are running around in, like, we call it clavicular breathing, this very shallow panic breath breathing.
Short, shallow, rapid survival mode.
Exactly. That'll be very adrenalized. So we're not breathing fully, we're not breathing deeply, getting very tense and tight up here. And that is the panic breath. And in yoga, we encourage a deeper diaphragmatic breath, or abdominal breathing, or diaphragmatic breathing, when you breathe all the way down into your belly. But also there's the thoracic breathing, when the chest expands and contracts. So there are kind of those three different breaths, and we call a yogic breath where we combine all three, and it's a full expansion and a full contraction of the body. So that is one of the first things, if not the first thing, that I teach in class to students, to new students. It's the first thing we do in class weekly. We're doing our abdominal breathing. We're doing maybe yogic breathing. We may do some other pranayama practices, but it's really anchored in the breath, anchored in deep, gentle, soft breathing. It's, it doesn't have to be like really forceful. It's deep, but it's gentle, and it's so important. And it is the foundation of yoga and meditation.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that word gentle, because I've been to many yoga classes myself, where completely not at the fault of the teacher. Of course, it is how they have been taught, and they are giving their practice, and I respect that in every way. But in many yoga classes I have attended, I will hear, take a big breath, and you see everyone go, which is maybe fine once, right? But if you begin to associate that with every time you practice yoga, and what could be an extension of that, every time you even just move your body, that your space and how you relax is by sucking air into your nose and blasting it out. It's almost, from what I know now about my research with breathing and my work with the Oxygen Advantage, in terms of the benefits of effortless breathing, in terms of that's almost doing you as much harm as the rapid shallow breathing could be as well. It's all slightly dysfunctional. And I'm so glad you used that word gentle, because I mean, even when you're talking about the East and the West, what it seems with me is that the East works from the framework of less is more, and that the West work with that sort of capitalism framework of more is more. If the more you do, the more you achieve, the happier you will be, which of course we know not to be true, but it is fed into us in school, in many different systems. The higher grades you get, you know, the better job you'll get, the better you'll be a really good adult. That's what I was sort of, you know, taught to believe on a very basic level anyway, which you then spend your adult life sort of undoing that belief. But coming back to the breath, even on a physiological level, when we over breathe, we expel too much carbon dioxide. And what a lot of people miss is that carbon dioxide is not this evil gas that is the, you know, at the main fault for global warming, and that's a different subject, but that carbon dioxide is the catalyst for the release of oxygen from the hemoglobin. And so by making the breathing deep but gentle, not only are we balancing the nervous system, but we're actually slightly increasing our levels of carbon dioxide, and then more oxygen is getting delivered to the tissues, muscles, and organs. And we're actually serving our body in a much better way. And just that phrase, less is more, since I came to the world of breathwork, has influenced my life enormously in terms of leaving this adrenalized state of more, go, 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 of what if less was more? What if, you know, deepening the breath and lessening the breath, not just in a yoga class, in everyday life, how does that change how I go through my life? And it changed my day to day profoundly. And which is why now, you know, I'm so passionate about just teaching that such simple lesson, and spreading knowledge of that throughout the world, with this science meets spirituality, that less is more. You know, you can have all the money and all the materialistic things you like, but if you are not in touch with your basic nature, in touch with how we were born to breathe, which, as you said, I think a lot of the world, especially the Western population, has lost touch with, then what do we have? Out external stimulation, and that's it.
Yeah, we'll probably have illnesses and you know, mental health issues eventually and things like that. So
which the world is riddled with right now, right? And I don't think there's any question of the connection between that and breath.
Yeah. No, again, it's absolutely fundamental. It is life force. You're literally breathing life into you and into your cells every time you take a breath. And, you know, in different traditions, they recognize even that the breath is the name of God. You've got the, you know, like Yah, and inhale Yahweh, inhaling Yahweh. And you can use that as a meditation. And we use Soham as well.
Soham I've heard of,
you know, and it's literally, you're saying, you know, I am that, you know, saying the name of the divine. The Kundalini yogis say Satnam, you know, name of truth. So yeah, like it's, and I like how you talked about being aware of your breath throughout the day. I remember one spiritual teacher saying that the intention was to be aware of every single breath you take in the day, you know, when you're awake. And can you imagine how aware and how self-aware you'd have to be to not even miss a breath? And that is what, essentially, that's self-awareness. And for me, self-awareness and spirituality are the same thing.
Absolutely.
Self-aware of your habit patterns, self-aware of your body posture, self-aware of your body injuries, self-aware of your emotional reactions, self-aware of your psychological patterns, and all these things, and self-aware of breath. And that is the most foundational and fundamental. It's the most foundational and fundamental meditation technique in all traditions. It works with the breath. You know, breath is talked about in a lot of the major texts. You know, I've just been preparing a seminar on Kashmir Shaivism, which is the pinnacle of Hindu tantric philosophy. And there's a famous text called Vijnana Bhairava, which gives 112 different methods to achieve God consciousness. It's quite a famous tantric text, 112 different techniques. And the first one and they have a few verses on it. It's just about the breath, and it's about the what we find in the yogic tradition is the kumbhaka, the retention is really key. Okay,
Yeah.
so in the Vijnana Bhairava, it talks about the point on the crest of the inhalation and the crest, and after the exhalation, there's that point. In fact, I'll read it because it's absolutely beautiful.
Please
So
do.
so there's this book called the Radiant Sutras. Okay, now
Okay.
what it is, it's let's say an artistic interpretation of the original text, the Vijnana Bhairava. But it's absolutely beautiful, and it's really, really special. So, I mean, again, it's not necessarily the direct translation, but it's beautiful to listen to. So I'm just gonna,
Please do.
read that if that's all right, because it's really beautiful. All right. So again, there's a few different verses on it, but this is the first one. The one who is intimate to all beings replies, "Beloved, your questions require the answer that come through direct living experience. The way of experience begins with a breath, such as the breath you are breathing now, awakening into luminous reality, may dawn in the momentary throb between any two breaths. Exhaling, breath is released and flows out. There is a pulse as it turns to flow in. In that turn, you are empty. Enter that emptiness as the source of all life. Inhaling, breath flows in, filling, nourishing. Just as it turns to flow out, there is a flash of pure joy. Life is renewed." And it continues to talk about that point between the inhalation and the exhalation as, you know, a beautiful place of meditation. And it talks,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, you like it, yeah. It's an amazing text, Radiant Sutras. It's written by Laurent Rocher. He's a Western chap who's like meditated on the original sutras for years, and just artistically interpreted the tantra. And yeah, so again, the first few one talks about the breath. So you can use the breath as a meditation, not just to be aware of it. And of course, in yoga, we have a whole system called pranayama. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that, where we work with the breath in different ways to ultimately, it's to balance the energies of the body to help prepare us for meditation.
Yeah, well, pranayama is, I mean, I kind of call pranayama the sexy stuff in a way, because like pranayama is so, you're right, it's really moving the breath, isn't it? And to sort of the outside, it's like quite a big expression of the breath in some ways. There's the breath of fire and all different things. And I love how much emphasis you have put on awareness as well, because often it's that thing of the simplest things, or all the sexy pranayama stuff is so powerful, but that those experiences cannot be to their full effect until we have that simple awareness, simple acknowledgement, not just in your yoga class, but day to day in are you in touch with your own body and mind? Because that's not always comfy. It certainly wasn't for me anyway. When I first started waking up and actually listening, I faced an awful lot of demons. So yeah, but I'd love for you to talk more about pranayama. 100%.
Yeah, I'm happy to go either way. I mean,
yeah,
I'm interested in how the day-to-day breathing helped you. I mean, I guess, was it because you were working 100 miles an hour?
Yeah,
and you
I'd
never
say
had
a billion miles an hour.
a billion miles an hour. Yeah. So you probably had on three cups of coffee and just all adrenalized, like nervous system crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What star sign are you again? You're Gemini.
Gemini.
Yeah, so that's already like air, right? So you're already like Vata, so already adrenalized, or your nervous system already quite active. There's a good thing. No, there are good things, you know, to work with there. It means you're good at active mind, communicator, busy bee, very chatty, gregarious, right?
Oh my goodness.
But also it can be the Vata energy and the Gemini air energy. It needs to be slowed down, right? It needs a bit of earth, a bit of calming, a little bit of stabilizing and stilling. And
Yeah.
so for vata dosha, this is going into Ayurveda again, the three different body types: vata, which is more air; pitta, which is fire; and kapha, which is earth. As a vata dosha, pranayama, or breathing, is, because it literally is the air element, you have a predominance of air and ether space, right? So you have, this is your natural quality, and that's a good thing. Like, there's no right or wrong dosha,
No,
right? There's
of
no
course.
right or wrong star sign. It's
No.
just, your personality. There are many qualities and benefits from that. But at the same time, when it gets out of balance, and the way I see Western life is, it is set up to put us out of balance.
I agree.
It's set up to make us ill, and that's when people like us come in, because we pick up the pieces, right?
Yeah.
When people have their kind of breakdowns or get
Yeah.
ill and can't cope, that's where people come to the center, and work with one-to-ones and things like that. So yeah, like, there has to be a wake up in someone's life. There has to be an event, and it's normally stress and trauma and challenge. I mean,
Yeah.
so for some it may be spiritual, around a spiritual experience, or just a natural curiosity that leads them deep into practice. But for most people, from my experience, they come to these practices through challenges, through trauma. So how did it? So yeah, so tell us about that transition that you went through.
Gosh, yeah. So I was in the acting world. Well, I was in the acting world, the fitness world, the modeling world, the a few other jobs world, sort of working events and different. I was doing many different things, which if anyone listening is in the performing world, I'm sure can relate to, that you sort of, do whatever you need to do to keep yourself in London, in terms of you're a waitress, or you're you're teaching fitness, or I was teaching children dance at some points, lots of different jobs on the go all the time, always chasing the next performing job, always trying to be good enough for whoever's approval for the next audition, which is a very big thing in performing. Of course, someone has to say yes, that you are allowed to perform and be in your element, in
You're good
terms
enough.
as you are good enough as
You're
a
a worthy
creative.
human being.
Exactly. And that's a very Western thing, in terms of, you just start with this fiery passion that you love, however you express, if you love to sing or dance or a voice and storytell, in terms of acting, whatever you're doing. It's a form of just energy and expression. It's no different to yoga. You are moving your body, and yoga is a little more structured, of course, and this is a little more free flow. But if you think of almost a piece of choreography, I did a lot of dance, that you are telling someone else's story through the shapes of your body and your expression and your breath as well. It always comes into it. But long story short, I was racing in this world. I wasn't experiencing any of it. I was in my head the entire time, constantly, what's next? I was living on a cruise ship, traveling around the Caribbean, having the most incredible experiences, and I cherish those memories. But was I really there, or was I sat there thinking, what's next? I'd say 85% of the time, I was actioning what I was going to do next, or what I could be next, or where this could take me, or how I could use this to my advantage to get somewhere else, that would make me successful, that would make me happy, that would make everyone think I was successful. And at the time, as much as it saddens me to say, that was my idea of, that's me happy. If I can just get this, I'll be really happy. If I could be this, if I could be on the West End, or if I could be in this film, I think of what my parents would say, or think of this, I've been that person they all wanted me to be. I'll be so happy. And along with I'll have the financial stability, and I'll have all these things you're taught that feed happiness. And there was just a moment of unraveling where I was not only exhausted, that my health started to decline. I was tired all the time. You could just see it in my skin, in the color of my face. Like I lost some weight, even though I was eating a lot. I just couldn't maintain a healthy weight. And I was just sort of a grayed version of myself. And I didn't really know who I was, because I was just being this chameleon of whoever anyone wanted me to transform into. I was like, yeah, I can do it. You know, which is the actress, right? Can you recite Shakespeare standing on a horse going backwards? Of course, that's completely illogical, but you know what I mean. I'd be like, yes, of course. And then I go get some riding lessons, you know, to be this person that everyone wanted me to be. And then lockdown happened and all this started. And I was forced to pause because it all went away. Any need to try completely dissipated. And I was left with space. And at first, I just didn't know what to do with that space. I was at my parents' house in Oxfordshire, in the countryside. I was just like, right, there's nowhere to go, and there's nowhere to be, and there's nothing. So what do I do? And I'd always been into yoga anyway, so I just started practicing, and I love reading, and so I started learning, and I started just reading more and learning, and my attention was drawn to the breath, both scientifically and spiritually. And I started watching videos, listening to podcasts, and etc. And I'd already sort of done a lot of looking into mindfulness and different things, but not this deeply. And something just opened in terms of, like, I felt so in touch with this it's not even a concept, just this world of breath. And I became fascinated by the breath, and I started practicing, having these profound experiences of, I think, not thinking for the first time as an adult. And I started to play more. I started to, if music was on, I just started to move. Not because how hilarious is that? Is even previously I would move but try and look good while I was moving. I was moving and just being the sort of lanky, gangly thing that I am, and just moving.
Self-conscious.
Just move.
Even if you're by yourself.
Right. And now, as soon as I started to breathe, and I started to straight away work with a few different people, and I had a few sessions with different people, and it's just, I was like, I want to get my hands on every technique I can, which in itself was me still running, but running towards it in the only way I knew how. And slowly I started to soften, and I started to slow down, and I started to face a lot of things I didn't really like about myself that I realized I was doing for everyone else. And I actually started to get to know myself, and I was someone completely different than everything I was trying to be. And ever since, I have been nurturing that, and it's led me to have this purpose to spread awareness of the breath, and the power of the breath. So that's sort of my story.
Wow, what a lovely story! So well spoken. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
No, yeah.
I think
it's a journey.
I think so many people can relate to that. I think pretty much everyone could relate to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to say and to talk about it. Yeah, like everything you just said there is just so significant. And you said, you know, when you in yoga and the Hatha yoga, Pratipika, and yoga in general, it's recognized that when you become conscious of your breath and slow your breath down, your mind automatically quietens.
Yeah.
And if you pretty much annihilate your breath, which really means makes it very, very subtle, which actually is the goal of more advanced yoga.
Yes.
Very, very subtle breath. The mind is completely quiet. And actually the silent mind is the goal of yoga. Yeah. And in that silence, your true essence shines forth, right? The true, authentic, beautiful being that you are illuminates. Because all the other expectations and beliefs and ideas and projections, ideologies, that's just baggage.
It's noise, right?
It's noise, it's baggage. It's like, you could use the analogy of ripples on a pond or stains on a mirror. It stops that purity from shining through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And therefore, not only just for good health, to fully oxygenate the body, the
Yeah.
brain,
Mm-hmm.
for the heart, the animals that breathe slower, pythons, tortoises, elephants live longer. There's a
Yeah.
direct correlation there between the pace and the speed of your breathing and to your longevity. But on a deeper level, it just allows you to quieten. And it's in that stillness where clarity dawns,
Yeah.
and where you can be free of all the projections and all the nonsense, all the noise that we've talked about. And that is yoga, actually.
Yeah.
And that is the goal, I believe, of almost every spiritual tradition.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And even with yoga, a journey I've definitely been on is the principle of what is, which a beautiful book, Open Heart, Open Mind by Sonyu Rinpoche, in the sort of Tibetan Buddhist practices of practicing Dharma. I don't know if I said that right, but
Yes,
what
correct.
is Dharma in terms of what is, and in terms of yoga especially, coming from that very aesthetically pleasing, making aesthetically pleasing shapes and lines with your body, that in a yoga class, of course, or the postures you're doing, then your first idea is that you want to do them well. And actually, it's a much deeper practice in yoga, and I'm very lucky to have had some great teachers to sit with what is, to sit with the shake, to sit with the ugly posture, to sit with the, just what is, what it is. And I think that's what any breath practice allows, to sit with what is, the good, the bad, the ugly, warts and all, just to sit with it and find an acceptance. And I think that's what's beautiful, because it's that acceptance, no matter where anyone is in terms of circumstances or where they are on their journey, acceptance is always there if you're willing to sit with it.
If you're willing to sit with it, which is
Right.
the key thing, because I think a lot of people are so externally focused and driven because they do not want to sit with it. They don't want to face themselves. And a lot of people can't be with themselves. A lot of people find either being alone or being quiet internally terrifying. And it's because all these things come up, things from the past, all the trauma, all the memories, all the emotions, all the thoughts, all the shadow. And it is not always easy, and it can be messy and scary and ugly and terrifying and upsetting. But that is the healing process.
Yeah.
That is the process of in the Yoga Sutras, it talks about the experience of meditation helps to wipe out all other negative experiences.
Yeah.
So all that you're left with is the pure experience of meditation.
Yeah.
So it's a very healing thing, actually, to do regularly. There's one thing to do. You're panicking, you're stressed. Okay, I'm just going to take 10 deep breaths. Okay, I've calmed, I can get on with my day. But to do this for 20, 30 minutes of breathing meditation, essentially, and all meditation, things can come up and you may find it very uncomfortable to sit with yourself. And I think a lot of people do find it difficult.
Of course.
But the with meditation is the goal is to just keep coming back to the focal point. So again, breath is one of the cornerstone of meditation and meditation techniques. And there are many different ways you can focus on your breath, whether it just observe your breathing, observe the sensation of the air coming in, counting before and between, after. There's so many different ways you can work with breathing techniques. But yeah, it's very healing.
100%. And getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think is an enormously important part of the journey, but it's the willingness to go. If you can go a little bit deeper, then maybe you can access the more profound or the more pure or the more simple even, if you're willing to go on the journey to face the discomfort of the clutter almost. I suppose that it doesn't, we live in such a society of Uber Eats and contactless payments and Amazon one-click delivery, that I think there is an ideology now that you go to one yoga class or one meditation class and you're like, yep, smashed it, you know, I can breathe, or I'm healed. It's what I would love to see come back more in this generation is the essence of practice, repetition, showing up over and
discipline.
over, over and over and over again, and not looking for anything new or spontaneous or, you know, anything shiny. There's even, you know, shiny breath work, like the big things. Like I adore Wim Hof. I think he's incredible. I'm a huge fan of Wim Hof, and the technique itself is amazing and brilliant. But sometimes some people almost treat that as a shiny technique where they jumped in the ice and they, you know, did these wild things. But can you just sit with yourself and not scroll through Instagram and not go on Facebook and not, you don't have to be alone ever if you don't want to anymore.
That instant gratification that our society has become based on. It's like, get the hits, you know, the endorphins from the likes and from the followers and from the views, and everything is now an instant, and like, you know, instant enlightenment, you know, 30 days to be enlightened, or
yes!
30 days, you
How
know.
many times do you see that? Yes, 2 weeks.
That kind of idea.
And
the reality is, exactly, it's madness. The reality is that it's a lifelong journey, and it does take daily discipline. Absolutely. It's that, you know, A+ effort, say 90 minutes a day. And even if you're only doing, say, C+ or C effort, like 20 minutes a day, 15 minutes, that's going to still have a profound effect. And everyone can find 20 minutes to start with. And it can just be as simple as sitting down or even lying down and just breathing and observing the breath and learning how to breathe deeply and more fully.
Yeah. And I mean, even linking back to what you said about the goal of yoga in advanced yoga is achieving that subtle way of breathing, that's such an incredible route to health. And that's a lot of people associate yoga with just, you know, they know it has a calming effect on the mind, but as a fitness, or, you know, using it to mobilize the body. But it's so much more than that, because if you can achieve subtle breath, you can change and balance the pH of your blood. That has a huge effect on your food cravings. That has a huge effect as a woman on your and men as well, on your reproductive system, that and your hormonal balance. And, you know, lightening the breath, I even notice it myself. I crave different food. I crave wholesome, grounded foods, vibrant foods. When I was go, what did I crave? Sugar, salt, you know, quick highs, always quick highs. What could I get? You know, and I at the time thought I was a really healthy person. I absolutely wasn't. Now, taking the time, I take time to make my food. I take time to eat my food. And I really think yoga itself, and it's all the same world, breathwork, yoga, it's all the same thing. It's a way of life. It's not just a class that you pay a one-time fee for. So I think, you know, I'm sure you'd agree.
Yeah, again, it's like it's self-awareness, like everything yoga. I mean, a lot of people approach yoga just as body beautiful, you know, and it's purely just for the physical benefit, and that's fine.
Handstand.
Yeah, you know, like Instagram, get your nice picture, and it's all about, you know, being strong and healthy and flexible, and like that's not a bad thing.
No.
But that's not yoga, actually. By definition, that's not yoga. That's asana, right? Posture. Yoga literally means union, which is the union of the the smaller self with the greater self, the ego with the
Beautiful.
soul. You know, it's that higher transcendent state. So the intention is self-awareness, as we mentioned before, and breath. You breathe throughout the day, and being aware of the breath, moment to moment, using it as an anchor point. So say, you know, we're getting lost in work, or we're getting lost in something, or even just here, we've been having this conversation, I keep coming back to the breath. Okay, it helps that we're talking about breath, but it's you know, it's a nice reminder, but it's just such a good thing. Or you're in a social environment, or, you know, a work environment, any environment, just breathing deeply and just coming back to the breath. So I was thinking maybe it'd be nice sort of to conclude the podcast. Maybe we could do a little bit of breathing, like a little bit of
Absolutely.
the way I would teach it, like a bit of
Please.
abdominal breathing,
Yes,
because it's
please.
good to talk about these things, but I think also it's important to have the practical.
100%.
Okay,
Oh,
so
that's great.
let's just do some, like, I teach this all the time. I teach this in classes, and it's a important part of yoga. It's just simple abdominal breathing, and I'm sure you're very
Yeah.
familiar with it. Okay, so, and then we'll see how we go. We can always add a ratio, and I know we've talked about ratios personally, but maybe that's for another conversation. We can start to go into more detail into pranayama and
Yeah.
different ratios. Okay, so we're just going to do basic abdominal breathing. So what I'll do,
Okay.
I'll just drop my camera down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you, oh yeah, actually see it.
Yeah, I can see you.
Yeah, I just want to see my belly. Okay, so if you come to your seated position,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, you can do this lying down, but generally speaking, in meditation, we're seated. But you know, that doesn't mean you can't do it as more of a relaxation. And sometimes, you know, well, actually, I do frequently kind of go into meditation lying down. So it can be performed lying if you prefer.
Mm-hmm.
So the spine is tall, shoulders down, chest is open. I just want you to close the eyes. Starting to take some nice full deep breaths. Just feeling the rise and the fall of the breath. And also just that little pause after the inhale and that little pause after the exhale. Just hold that for a count or two. Just feel that rising on the inhale and that descent on the exhale. Just notice how everything softens and quietens. Just let go of external distractions. Just fully focused on the breath and the sensation of the breath. So we're going to bring the hand onto the belly, onto the abdomen. As you inhale, just expand your abdominals, push your belly out like a balloon expanding. Just hold the breath for a second at the apex of the inhale. And then on the exhale, release and draw the abdomen into the spine. As you feel a slight contraction of the body. Inhaling deeply, belly expand. Holding the breath. And exhaling, belly contracts. Holding the breath out. Inhaling deeply, belly expands. Imagine trying to fill your belly with oxygen. Holding the breath, linger here. Exhaling, drawing the abdomen to spine. Holding the breath out. Inhaling deeply, belly expands. Gently, softly, holding. Exhaling, belly draws in. Just continue with those full, deep abdominal breaths. Just see if you can lengthen, draw out the breath even more. So let's bring the hands onto the heart. Let's take some deep breaths into the heart, making the heart connection. Just noticing how you're feeling in your heart. And bring the hands to prayer. Good morning, everyone. So it's a nice place to be when you go there, you know, and it's when you practice. I mean, everything takes practice in life, and breathing and meditation take practice. But, you know, when you do practice, it becomes easier to stay focused on the breath and becomes more natural to take those deeper, fuller breaths. Then you can go into that quiet state very quickly. And even just, you know, if you're practicing it for the first time, the chances are you will notice a big difference, which is great. And just to integrate that kind of breathing, again, we call it diaphragmatic or abdominal breathing, where the belly moves in and out. Oxygen is going into the lower part of the lung, fully oxygenating and activating the lung. And then you feel the benefit for the mind, you experience the effect on the mind. So yeah, definitely encourage, if you haven't practiced this before, just to try. And you can, again, it's just as simple as doing that abdominal breathing, and then I do kind of teach counting and ratios and things like that. That's, the next step. But it's about, there are 4 stages of the breath. There's the inhalation, there's the holding, there's the exhalation, and then there's holding out. So if we work with those 4 parts of the breath and not just thinking of it as just inhale, exhale, but also we hold in for a little while, we hold out for a little while, then that's actually where the real magic happens, in the holding in and the holding out.
Yeah, and you can get to a place where you're breathing 1 breath per minute at points. And there's an incredible teacher called Simon Borg, who I was lucky enough to have on the podcast actually, who daily practices 1 minute breaths, sometimes even 1 breath per couple of minutes, for an hour continuously. And to get to that point of slowness and elongation and expansion of the body, to be in that relaxed place, but to still be so coherent and so focused, it's that balance again, like we were talking about. That's of course a level of mastery, but to even get that on a smaller level, like we've just been doing, even just that first step of slowing the breath has so much benefit.
I mean, even there we were probably doing 4 or 5 breaths a minute. So, and that's without even focusing on the retention. So absolutely, to slow it down to a couple of breaths, 2, 3, 4 breaths a minute is going to be really, really beneficial. And it's quite manageable. And again, the pranayama practices of yoga help develop the practitioner to that exact state. And if you're only breathing once a minute, your mind is going to be very, very quiet. So you're automatically going to be in a deep state of meditation as well.
Yeah, exactly. Of course. Just to finish up, what is your sort of not message, but what is your intention, I suppose, for, I know you're teaching yoga teachers to facilitate at the moment and different things like that. And what is your intention, I suppose, in terms of what you give to the world with your practices and with the center and different things, and if you can put it into a sort of nutshell, I suppose.
In a nutshell, yeah. Well, I guess maybe two different things. In terms of the center, it's really a safe community, a safe sanctuary, a healing space for people of all ages, of all abilities, injuries, illness, or whatever, are healthy, doesn't matter. A safe, nurturing sanctuary and space to explore all these different things. And hopefully Georgie will be joining the center or out of lockdown, so that'd be really nice to do your breathing. So in terms of the center, that's my intention. In terms of like what my intention is as to what I personally offer the world is, there are many things that I'm interested in, but ultimately my goal is to present yoga in its true, authentic, tantric nature.
Yeah.
Now, when I say tantra, I'm talking about chakras, kundalini. They're the main aspects of tantra, because hatha yoga is very tantric. It's born out of tantra.
Right.
The hatha yogis hatha yoga is a tantric practice. And again, tantra works with the body to expand our consciousness. That is what tantra is essentially. It embraces the body, embraces yoga, embraces kundalini, embraces chakras, and embraces rituals and all sorts of things to expand our consciousness. So in my training, I've been going through the ancient texts. I teach them. I teach philosophy, study philosophy, and also going through a lot of the tantric texts. And these are pure, beautiful philosophical texts, which give yogic practices primarily. So that is my intention because we've lost in the West, we've lost the essence of yoga. I don't think we ever had it in the first place, to be honest. It's just body beautiful asana-based practice. And again, there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's recognized that is just asana. It is to keep the body strong, healthy, flexible. And that's important because then that allows us to sit and breathe and meditate.
Mm.
But the goal of yoga is ultimately Raja Yoga, which is samadhi, which is deep, silent meditation. And there are different ways and different approaches to that. You can go and work more with the chakras. You can work with mantra. You can work with breath. You can work with different things. But the ultimate goal is silent mind and an expansive silent mind. So that is my intention. And, I feel like I've got so much more study and work to do, like there's so much to learn and so much to integrate and put together in a holistic system.
Always.
And I'm just on that journey really. And these last few months, it's been a lot of reading, a lot of study, and I've been doing my seminars for my students. But yeah, it's just a never-ending process. So I love to have these conversations because
Me
then it
too.
means I have to go into different areas that maybe I haven't looked at for a while, or new areas
Yeah.
to explore, and then get your input and feedback. And it'd be great to to have another chat and maybe go into a little bit more deeper into pranayama, and
Mm.
maybe even go more into tantra and some of the tantric practices
Yeah.
of working with breath and kundalini and the chakras. So yeah.
Of course. Yeah. So today, I mean, it's been awesome and very, yeah, eye-opening. Um, and just, yeah, a very wholesome conversation. So thank you. It's
You're
been a
very, very
joy.
welcome. It's been awesome speaking. And just for those who are watching via my YouTube, how can they find you on Georgie in terms of
So for me,
online?
yeah, for me, my Instagram is Breathe with Georgie with an IE, and my YouTube channel is the same, Breathe with Georgie, and the podcast that people will be listening to on here too is Just Breathe. So anyone listening via James, the podcast I have is called Just Breathe, and then for you, do you want to do the same? How can
Sure.
people
Yeah.
find you?
Yeah. So
Because
I'm on.
it'll be on both channels.
Yeah, absolutely, which is great. So the website is the main website is
Uh-huh.
yorkshirewellbeing.co.uk. We're based in Harrogate. My personal YouTube is Gopala. So Gopala is my spiritual name, Gopala, Gopala Yoga, and Instagram also Gopala Yoga. And we've got various podcasts and yoga and some
Mm.
breathing and various things on the YouTube, especially. So yeah, and drop us a
Perfect.
message. It'd be good to hear your feedback and any
Yeah.
questions. I'm sure we'll both be happy to answer.
Yeah, of course. And hopefully, we'll both be teaching in person at the center when it is allowed. And
That's it. Well, hopefully not too long now. So
not
yeah,
too
middle of
long.
May. So do check us
Yes.
out, especially if you're in the Yorkshire area, Harrogate area. We've got this beautiful centre in Harrogate, beautiful gardens and lovely
Mm.
energy and lovely people, lovely community, all ages, all abilities. We offer different classes and breathing, yoga, Pilates. We've got therapists. We've got
Yeah.
Ayurvedic specialists. We've got loads of things going on. So do drop us, come along and see what we're doing.
Yeah. Watch this space.
Watch this space. Real. Thanks, Georgie.
Thank you.
Mm.
Right.